Graham here for Trailblazer RV. Today we're going to do a new RV orientation on this 2008 Glendale Titanium 30E35SA. Starting right here at the door side of the trailer, we're going to start with the awning. This is a manual awning by A&E. It's pretty simple to operate, but if you're shorter than about 5.5 feet, you'll probably need a step stool to reach some of the items. The first thing that we're going to do is release the travel latches on both arms. And loosen off the tension knob that you'll find on the back of the arm. So do that on both sides. Then you've got your awning pull rod. You're going to use this to reach up, grab this little lever, and pull it down to the roll down position. Once you've done that, you can flip the rod over to the hooked side, reach up and grab the pull strap. Then the awning will pull down. Once it's all the way down, you can release the pull strap. These rafters slide all the way up and latch into place at the top. Then what I like to do is put a little bit of downward pressure on the arm and tighten up this knob. By putting downward pressure on the arm, it ensures that the canvas is tight so that it won't flap excessively in the wind. We'll do that on both sides as well. Then we need to lift the awning up into place. When you have an awning like this one, the arms are mounted at two different heights. I like to start with the lower side of the awning. That way you'll be able to lift this side all the way up and latch it into place, and then lift this side all the way up. Now your awning is extended. A couple of little tricks with these manual awnings. It's a good idea to use the awning with one side a little bit lower than the other. That way if you get a heavy rainstorm, you won't get water build up in the awning fabric. So if you just lower one side down a couple of holes from the other side, that'll allow the water to drain off. And another suggestion that I have, I just like to suggest people take a little bolt or a quick link or something and just put it through this next lowest hole on the arm. That way if somebody were to unknowingly grab this handle and pull it, the awning can't come crashing down if it's latched or if it's locked in place with a bolt. To put the awning away, it's exactly the same steps, only the reverse. So again, we'll start with the other arm, the higher arm. That'll allow you to put that arm all the way down so that you don't have to move back and forth between arms. So just lift up on the handle, let the awning down. Come to the other side to do the same thing. Then you'll release the tension from the knob and release the rafter from the top. And the easiest way to do that is with a little catch right underneath here. So just pull down on that and release that rafter. Once those rafters have slid down, now you need to roll the tube back up. So the first thing you want to do is grab your pull strap again and hook it onto your awning pull rod. You want to make sure and have this in your hand when you flip this switch back to the roll up position. So we put that to the roll up position. That now puts tension on this awning roller, and it's going to roll up by itself. You just have to make sure you're holding tight to the awning rod so that it doesn't get away on you. Once it's back up, tighten the tension knobs again and close the travel locks. And you're ready to travel. Do not, at this point, flip this switch back again. People mistake this sometimes for a lock. It's a two-position switch. It's either in the rolled out or the rolled up position. So once it's in the rolled up position, just leave it where it is, lock the travel locks, and you're good to go. Your awning pull rod can store back inside your front storage compartment. The previous owner of this fifth wheel traded it in with a couple of Velcro straps. So we left them in there because they make great travel latches or extra travel security for your awning arms. That way, if you were to have some type of a problem with the roll-up mechanism or the travel latch, you've got one more thing ensuring that your awning doesn't come open. Here in the front storage compartment, you've got access to several things. And they're all nicely hidden away behind access panels. So this access panel right here, you can open up to access some plumbing items. This is where you've got your access to your water pump. So if you ever need to repair or replace a water pump, this is where you'll access it. And if you plan to do your own winterizing, this is where you'll access the water pump as well to pump antifreeze through the water system. If you're curious about doing your own winterizing, look for our winterizing video here on our YouTube channel. Also in here, you have low point water line drains. Red is your hot water side and blue is your cold water side. And this is also where you'll access your electric over hydraulic disc brake actuator should you ever need to for service work. Right above that panel, you've got some electrical equipment. This is your master battery disconnect. So by turning this switch off, it kills all of the 12-volt power in the RV. This switch does not kill the power to your power front jacks, which we'll cover in just a second. So you are free to leave this switch turned off. You'll still be able to level and hook up the fifth wheel. Right next to that is a power inverter. This is a dedicated power inverter for your entertainment system. So if you want to operate your TV and DVD player off of 12-volt power when you're not hooked up to shore power, you can do that. You just have to turn this switch on and give that inverter a few seconds to power everything up before you turn on your equipment. There's also a toggle switch inside the cabinet of your entertainment center to toggle between inverter power and shore power. I'll show you that when we get inside. Next to that is your converter access. This is where you'll access your converter. That's the charging center for the RV, the battery charging center for the RV. Not really anything that you need to get at in there, just access for if you ever needed to repair or replace the power converter. Most importantly, inside here, you'll find two Trailblazer RV director's chairs that we promised you when we made the deal. Follow me over here to find the other panel. This is your hot water tank access panel. Inside this panel, you'll find your bypass valves for your hot water tank. The two valves there, one on a red line and one on a blue line, are to bypass the hot water tank from the system. And down here you'll find a bypass valve at the bottom of the tank. So when you go to winterize the system, you'll need to close both of these valves and also open this bypass valve, or close the valve into the bottom of the tank. This tank also has a mixing valve on it. So you can use this valve to mix a little bit of cold water in with the hot water coming out of the tank. This isn't something you see on modern RVs, and my recommendation would be, unless you're unsatisfied with the temperature of the water, just to leave this alone. It doesn't really need to be used for anything. Right here we have your 12-volt battery. So you've got two leads going to your battery, white to negative and black to positive. In an RV application, anytime you have a white and a black wire, white is always negative, black is always positive. This is a Group 31 12-volt deep cycle RV battery. It is a maintenance battery, which means occasionally you'll need to top up the electrolyte level of the battery. To do that, just remove this sticker on the top. That'll expose 6 cells, and you can open up each of those cells and check the level of fluid in that battery. If any of the cells look a little bit low, you can top it up with some distilled water and put a good charge on the battery. We also recommend when you store the RV over the winter, removing the battery and storing it inside somewhere where it's not going to freeze. If possible, put a trickle charge on the battery once or twice over the course of the winter. Right here, next to your battery, you've got a little electrical access with several fuses and circuit breakers. The majority of your fuses and circuit breakers will be accessed from inside, but there are a handful of applications such as your inverter, landing leg controls, and a few other things that have inline fuses, which you'll access from here. Then another master battery disconnect here as well. This will disconnect all power, including the landing legs. Also here in the front storage compartment is where you'll find your 50 amp power cord. So this just attaches on to the outside wall of the trailer. I'll show you that in a second. And we also supply an adapter. So it's a 50 amp power cord with a 50 amp to 30 amp adapter here, and a 30 amp to 15 amp adapter here. So you can plug into 15, 30, or 50 amp power. We've also got a generator set aside for you. This is your generator adapter to plug your 30 amp power cord into your generator. Couple of crank handles in here as well. This sort of gold colored handle is to manually crank your front landing gear should you ever need to, and you also have a handle to crank your rear stabilizing jacks down at the back of the trailer. Right here is where you'll access the controls for your power legs. So with this fifth wheel, the legs are on independent motors, so you can run each leg individually, the passenger leg or the driver's leg, extend and retract, or you can operate both legs together to extend and retract to hook up and unhook from your tow vehicle. Right around the side, this is where you'll find the manual crank location. Should you need to manually crank those legs, you can use that jack handle to crank one leg at a time here on this side, and similarly on the other side. And the water connection right beneath that is your sewer tank flush system. So when you're dumping your black water holding tank, you can have a garden hose hooked up to here to spray out the inside of that tank. Just kind of clean off the walls of the tank and the monitor probes to ensure that your monitor panel keeps reading correctly. Right behind that is your propane tanks. The tanks that were on the fifth wheel when it came in were expired, so we put new tanks on. These are brand new 30-pound propane tanks. They're both full right now. And you've got an automatic switchover propane regulator here. So right now you can see the regulator pointing to this bottle for the supply bottle. That makes this the supply, and this is the reserve. What we recommend is opening both bottles. Then when the supply bottle is completely empty, the regulator will automatically start to pull from the reserve bottle. You can see on this regulator there's a little indicator at the top showing red right now. That indicates that there's no propane flowing from the supply bottle right now, just because it's off. As I open the valve, you'll see that indicator go from red to green, indicating that there's propane flowing from this bottle. Right here is your hot water tank. You can open up the door to access the outside of the hot water tank. Just a couple of things in here that are worth knowing about. You've got a pressure relief valve here. If the tank ever over pressurizes, this will pop to release the pressure from the tank. You'll also want to use this to bleed the pressure off the tank before you pull the plug to drain the water from the tank. And the plug for the water tank sits right down here at the bottom. Many RV hot water tanks use a anode rod for the plug. This tank, it's not required. The tank is lined with a different material that doesn't need the anode rod. Right above the hot water tank is your city water connection. So this is where you'll hook up to pressurized city water if you're at a site that has water hookups. Anytime you're hooking up to here, we recommend using a water pressure regulator, which is just a little brass piece that goes on the end of your hose to maintain proper operating water pressure in the RV. And if you're not staying at a site that has pressurized water hookups, you can fill your freshwater tank from here. So using the same hose, what we'd recommend is one of those white drinking water specific hoses, and then you can just fill your freshwater tank just using gravity. Right next to that is where you'll find your sewer tank dump valves. So when you go to dump your holding tanks, your sewer hose is stored right here. We supply a 20-foot medium heavy-duty sewer hose. It's brand new, and it's right there in the hose storage. So remove the hose from the storage, pull the cap off of the sewer dump, attach the hose to the RV. Other end of the hose goes into the ground, and then you've got the two valves right here. The valve on the right is your sewage holding tank. The valve on the left is your wastewater. Always dump the sewage first, and then use your wastewater to kind of flush the contents through that sewer hose, so that you don't have any sewage contents sitting in the hose when you disconnect it from the RV. When you've got this valve open, dumping the black water or sewage, that's when you can have a hose hooked up to here and turned on to flush out the inside of that tank. Beneath that is an exterior shower. I don't have the keys in my pocket, but it's pretty simple. It has hot and cold water access and just a little shower head for access to outside water. Don't forget to winterize this when you're winterizing the RV. It's commonly missed in the winterizing process, and as a result, we replace a lot of these in the spring. This is where you'll hook up that 50 amp power cord. We've just got it hooked up with one of our shop cords right now, but that 50 amp cord will attach right onto here, thread into place, and then the other end of the cord plugs into your camping post. And the other appliance that's accessible from right here is your furnace. You can remove this panel for some service and repair work, but mostly that would be something that would be done by an RV technician. One thing to know about this is it does get very hot, so if you've got young kids around the trailer, make sure that they know to stay away from that when the furnace is running. And then the only other item that I wanted to cover here is your freshwater drain. Right down here next to the sewer tank storage is a little tap. You can open that tap up to drain the water from the freshwater tank. FYI, it is open now. So if you go to fill your water tank with fresh water, you'll need to first close that, otherwise it'll all drain out on the ground. Here around the back of the fifth wheel is where you've got your fridge vent. So you can remove this vent panel to access the back of the fridge. Not very often that you need to do that, but it's nice to get in there and just clean the dust and cobwebs and stuff out occasionally. Mostly this is for venting. The propane fridge needs some airflow in order to operate properly. And here at the back of the fifth wheel, you've got your stabilizing jacks. So once you've got the RV parked and leveled, you can use the crank handle in the front storage compartment to crank these down to be snug with the ground, but you don't want to actually lift the fifth wheel off the ground with those. They're not for leveling, just for stability. Here in the back, you've got a satellite input here if you want to hook up a portable tripod satellite. And then you've got a couple more connections down here, telephone connection and cable connection. In 2008, people probably use those regularly, but in 2020, you probably won't use those connections very often. Roof ladder on the back. We do recommend getting up on the roof once or twice a year of any RV just to visually inspect your roof seals and seal up any areas that look like they may be problematic before leaks occur. And just a note about the running gear. This one has never lube axles on it, so they're not greasable bearings. You don't need to grease those like you do a lot of the new RVs with the grease zerks there. Your lug nuts are torqued to 100 foot-pounds, and we do recommend with an RV periodically retorquing wheel lug nuts. Just because of the way RVs turn, it's a good idea to retorque those periodically. And your tires are inflated to, I believe it's 80 psi on these ones. So just a good idea if it's been parked for a little while between trips to double check the tire pressure before you head out on the road. Actually got an additional sewer hose storage here on this side, so you've got multiple areas to store sewer hoses. I think that pretty much covers it around the outside. If you'll follow me inside the trailer, we'll show you how to do a few things in there. So right here at the entry door, you've got several switches. Bank of 12-volt switches right at the bottom. This controls your main interior lighting for the RV. Also your exterior scare lights. You've got up at the front of the trailer on both sides, you have big 12-volt lights. This is the door side, and this is the off-door side. And then you have one more switch at the end, which is your exterior yard light. Above that is your monitor panel. So here you can press the level test button to check the levels of your holding tanks and battery. So right now you can see your battery is a green light. That's 12 volts or better, which is a fully charged battery. Fresh water is completely empty, black completely empty, and gray tank completely empty. As they fill up, these lights will light up from red or from green to red. This is also where you'll activate your water pump. So if you're parked somewhere where you're not hooked up to water or pressurized water, you can turn on the water pump to pump water from your freshwater reservoir. The 3 switches above that are for your slide outs. So the kitchen slide out, the main slide out, and the bedroom slide out. They're each independent electrical systems, so you can run any slide out all by itself. And with this style of slide out, it is fine to open it up just a few inches if you need to get by here to access something in the living area, and then close it up again. Some of the other slide out mechanisms out there, it's a good idea to run them all the way out and all the way in. These ones, it's just fine if you want to open it up just 6 inches or so to gain access to the RV. Here in the kitchen, a couple of things to cover. Your microwave is just a simple over-the-range microwave, just like the ones in your home. Stovetop is a 3-burner gas stovetop. So your front burner is a high output burner. This has higher BTUs than the rear burners. And all 3 of these burners work with the piezo igniter. They really do. There we go. And that was a good way to illustrate my next point, which is anytime you refill your propane tanks, anytime you have your propane tanks disconnected and reconnect them to the trailer, good idea is to come in here and just light all 3 of these burners. By lighting all 3 burners, you'll bleed any air that's in the propane lines off of the system so that your automatic appliances have no problem starting up, your fridge, furnace, and hot water tank. That's what was happening there. We had to bleed quite a lot of air off of the system before the burners would light. The oven is the only pilot light in the RV that you'll have to worry about. And to light the oven, turn it over to pilot. You have to push in on this knob and hold. And while you're holding that knob in, you can use a barbecue lighter to light the pilot right here. Once you see a flame there, continue to hold in on the knob for 10 or 15 seconds for the flame sensor to heat up. Once you release that knob and the flame stays on, then you can turn the oven up to temperature. Once you're finished using the oven, you can turn it just back down to pilot and leave the pilot burning if you want, or turn it all the way off and just relight the pilot next time you need to use the oven. You got a couple of power outlets here in the kitchen. This one is a notable power outlet. This is your Gfi outlet. So it has a test and reset button on it, just like the outlets in the bathroom of your home. The only difference is in an RV, this is wired in series with several of your other power outlets. So if you trip the GFI on this power outlet, you'll lose power at a lot of your other outlets as well. So if you ever plugged into power and you're wondering why your outlets don't work, a good place to start is come here, press reset, and that should reset the whole system. And you've got a couple of those around the RV, so probably a couple of different GFI circuits. Your fridge is a dual gas electric refrigerator, and the controls for that are right here in the freezer. So pretty simple to operate. Turn it to the on position. That lights up the LCD display here. And when it's in automatic, you can see the little automatic indicator there. When it's in automatic, anytime you're plugged into power, it'll automatically run on power. But if you blow a breaker or the trailer gets accidentally unplugged or something like that, it'll sense that and it'll automatically switch over to propane. You can override the automatic to only run on gas. There's not very many situations where you'd want to do that, but you might find that the fridge cools a little bit faster running on gas than it does running on electricity. Having said that, it takes several hours to cool a big RV fridge like this down. So a good idea to get the fridge cooling the day before you load it up so that you know it'll be cold by the time you put your food into it. This one has a temperature setting as well. Right now it's set to 6. Whoops. Right now it goes from 1 to 5. So I'll leave it set on 4 for now. And depending on the ambient temperature and other factors, you may find you need to adjust that periodically. Inside the actual fridge compartment is where you'll find your keys. If we didn't hand you these at the time of delivery, that's where these are. Here in the living area, you've got your entertainment center. Your TV is a 110 volt TV, so it will work when you're plugged into 110 volt power. Same goes for your DVD/stereo system. This one has that dedicated inverter. So if you want to operate your entertainment system when you're not plugged into power, you can do that via your battery by flipping this toggle switch from shore power to inverter power. Just push down on that toggle switch. You've also got here a switching box, so you can set your different TV locations to use different sources. So if you want your main TV using the TV antenna and your second TV watching a DVD, you can do that and watch 2 different sources at the same time on your different TVs. You've got here a little desk that pulls out and a couple more power outlets here for computer equipment if need be. I don't think there's anything real important to cover here. These lights have their own individual switches on them. Most of your lights in the ceiling will have switches on the wall, but most of your accent lighting you'll find switches just on the light fixture itself. Right here by the entry door, you've got your Dirt Devil vacuum system. So you can open up the top step to access the vacuum itself. Remove this panel on the end of the vacuum to change vacuum bags if you need to. And your thermostat is located right here in the hallway. So this controls both the heating and air conditioning for the fifth wheel. For air conditioning, you can just turn it over to cool and set the temperature that you want, and the air conditioning will kick on and off automatically as required. Same with heat. Turn it over to the heat setting, and you can just crank that all the way up, just high enough to get it to kick in here in our shop. We should hear in a second the furnace start up. There it goes. So that furnace fan comes on, and the fan itself is going to run for 15 or 20 seconds before the actual burner lights up. And you should be able to hear that ticking and the burner light up as soon as that happens. I'm not sure if you could hear that in the video, but the burner is now running. So now it'll bring itself up to temperature, and then exactly the same thing will happen. The burner will go out immediately, but that fan is going to continue to run for 30 seconds to a minute just to go through its cycle before it shuts down. And I've just turned off the system, so same thing. That fan's going to run for another 30 seconds or more just to cycle before it shuts down. Here in the bathroom, Just a couple of things to be aware of. You've got some switches on the wall here for different lights. This one for your vanity lights, and another switch here for your main bathroom light. And then you have a switch here for the exhaust fan as well. With your toilet, anytime you're using an RV toilet system, you want to make sure and use a good RV toilet chemical. The chemical is available in powder, liquid, or tablet form. Doesn't matter which one you use, but when you add chemical to the toilet, put the chemical right into the toilet bowl, push halfway down on the foot flush to fill the bowl with water, and then push the rest of the way down to dump the water and chemical down into the tank. It's important to note that toilet chemical needs a little bit of water to activate it. So every time you add chemical to the system, make sure to put some water down with it. And you'll want to do that immediately after you dump the holding tanks, so that you've always got some RV toilet chemical in the tank. What else in the bathroom? I think that pretty much covers it here. You have a Gfi outlet here, but this is wired in series with the Gfi in the kitchen. So if you've tripped your Gfi, you'll reset that in the kitchen rather than in the bathroom. And here in the bedroom, you've got a couple of ceiling lights here. These have their own switch, but right around the corner you've got a light switch here as well to operate the other bedroom light. This is a automatic satellite system controller. This fifth wheel has a automatic satellite dish installed on it. A lot of these 10-plus-year-old satellite systems are obsolete now, or they haven't had the updates that they require. So this may or may not function properly with modern satellite systems. And also here in the bedroom, you've got a fantastic vent. This is an upgraded model of a fantastic fan with a thermostat on the wall. So you can set the temperature and humidity for the fan here. You can hear that vent lid opening up automatically, and then the fan will kick on as needed. This one also has the rain sensor, so if the fan senses any moisture from rain, it'll automatically close that lid. It's also the reversible model, so right now it's set to pull air out of the RV. You can reverse that to blow air in. If you're going to do that, we recommend shutting the fan down first before you switch it from out to in, to avoid blowing a fuse. And we turn that off and it'll automatically close the vent. Here in the bedroom slide area, you've got washer dryer hookups. If you want to, you're set up for a combination washer dryer here. And I think for the most part that covers everything. Hopefully you've learned something about 2008 Glendale Titaniums. If you have any questions, you can always get a hold of us here at Trailblazer, or subscribe to our YouTube channel for more RV walkthrough videos, and visit our website, trailblazerrv.com. Thanks.